Papa comes in third, then Uncle Albert is Albert Larkin, Moses Lewis, John Wesley, Curtis Arthur, Moses Lewis, and Albert Larkin. That's their name that they call him. And Uncle John's oldest son is named Elsa. And next one was Slow, and next one was there, and next one was Ellie, we called Sid. And I should have, I started that wrong. I should have named up Kurt first.
Okay, any girls in the family?
Well, oh yeah. They had a sister named Molly and one Lucy.
And that's Papa's sisters,
Yeah,
Molly and Lucy.
yeah. And then, of course, Uncle Kurt, I should have mentioned him first. Curtis Arthur, he had a son named John, a son named Lee, and a daughter named Molly. And then, of course, my daddy was Moses Lewis. He had I'm his oldest son, Robert, and had one named Joe, one James because Gibb, one Lewis, one Paul, one Frank, one Malcolm. And there comes Uncle Albert Larkin. He had a daughter named Myrtle, son named William, and a son named Walter, and a daughter named Cleo. That's the boy.
Okay, how did Hick name the Millers down through to Hick Miller? Okay, his daddy was
Hick's dad was John M. Miller. John Monroe Miller.
that was his daddy.
Yeah, Hick's dad.
But he had a brother named John M.
Yeah, John M. Yeah.
Okay, John Monroe. Now, who was John Monroe's? Who was his daddy?
Uncle Kurt Miller, Curtis Arthur.
Okay, about now Mary Bell. How did Mary
Well,
Bell?
Lee Miller is Mary Bell. Lee Miller was Arthur and Melvin and Bob, Chili Ray, and Ben, Mary Bell and then Ben. That's their children. That's Lee Miller's children. That's Uncle Kurt's son's children, Lee's children. Then Molly, she didn't have any children. She married Ed Saxon, but they didn't have any children.
So Mary Bell is and Molly. That's it. Mary Bell's aunt, Molly.
Yeah. That's right.
Well, what about the girls?
What you mean?
The sisters, Papa's sisters.
Oh, well, I'm not sure about whether which is oldest, but we say Molly. She had a son named Walter and a daughter named Rosie. And I'm not sure whether they had another child or not. And then Aunt Lucy, Papa's sister, had Bill Loveday is her son, and her husband named Neil Loveday.
So that's how we related to the Lovedys, through Papa's sister.
Yeah, yeah. Papa's sister married Neil Loveday.
And that's why, that's how John, we're kin to John Lovedey and Neil that's over
Yeah,
there now.
yeah. That's really, yeah. See,
And that's through Molly Miller.
what?
Was that through Molly Miller, that's Papa's sister?
Aunt Lucy was.
Oh, it's through Lucy.
Yeah, Aunt Lucy married Neil Loveday.
Okay.
Therefore, Bill Loveday was her son, then John Harry and all the rest of their children were, of course, as the Loveday family. Of course, Bill Loveday married Dovey McCoy, they called her Dovey McCoy. And she had Harry, John, and Maddie, and Neil, and Evelyn. I believe that's it. I believe that's it. I believe that's all of them. See, Harry, John, Maddie, Neil, and Margaret, and then Evelyn. Yeah, Margaret comes in there too. Yeah, Margaret. That's all of them. That's Aunt Lucy's grandchildren, Bill Loveday's children. And then, wait a minute, I'm sorry, Bert. I forgot something. Becky was his sister. That's Amos's mother.
Now that was three sisters.
Yeah, he had three. I can't remember like I used to, Bert. I'm slow about remembering, thinking, so. But that's right, he had Becky comes in there. That's Amos Miller's mother.
Okay, the Molly
This
Miller.
gonna be all jumbled up, and then maybe you can straighten it out later.
Okay, the Molly Miller now, who is that? That's the Papa's sister. Who is descendants of Molly?
Well, I was telling you, Walter and Rosie, she married Faith Stoffel, and I know she's had a son named Walter and a daughter named Rosie.
So that's where the Stoffels come in.
Yeah. Married Faith Stoffel, yeah.
Okay, do we know any of those?
And now,
I'm not
wait a
familiar.
minute, of course, the Stoffel comes in another way. Uncle Kurt married Jane Stoffel, too. That was the mother of Uncle Kurt's children, John and Lee and Molly. Aunt Jane was a Stoffel, too.
And Molly married a Stoffel then.
Uncle Kurt and Aunt Molly both married Stoffels.
Okay.
Right.
Do you remember very much about Papa's daddy, Burgess?
Well, maybe I told you a while ago on that first part about, I remember when we lived back on the creek place. That's about the most I can remember of it, is back there, and we used to go up there, and I used to go up to Mount William, and he'd go up there with a long cotton pig sack, and knock the cedar stumps up with the axe, and throw them in, fill that thing up and throw it across the shoulder, and I'd fall and down to the house and use that to burn. Yeah, that was my uncle. My granddaddy Burgess Miller.
What about his wife? You remember Aunt Bet?
Granny, we called her. Her name was Bet. They called her Bet.
Cause your name.
Grandmother, my grandma Miller, we lived over on Carl's place. And Aunt Jane and my grandma Miller both died while we lived there. We lived there 4 years. Both of them died. That's Uncle Kurt's wife and John Lee and them. Mother died while we lived there. And then my grandma Miller died while we lived there. And I'm sure that she had Alzheimer's disease, or however you speak that anyway, back in. But they didn't know about it, I don't think. But anyway, her mind got bad, real bad. And she had good strength. Boy, she was stout as a young woman. And she lived to be, it's either 89 or 90, about 90 years.
You talking about Aunt Bet? I mean,
Grandma Miller.
yeah.
Bet. She lived to be right at 90 anyway. But if her mind got bad and she was back in, she'd get out on the road. Mama tried to keep her from leaving, you know, but she couldn't handle her. She was just about as strong as my mama was. And she'd even try to lock her up where she couldn't get out. And she'd climb out the window, oh she would. She'd get on that road and she'd meet people walking. See, back in there wasn't any cars hardly. If it had been, she'd got wouldn't lasted any time hardly. But anyway, she'd walk through roads and she'd meet people walking. She'd ask them if they'd seen her children, or maybe they'd ask her where she's going if they knew her. She'd say, I'm hunting my children. And she even went one house down to Nash's and went to bed. Went to bed.
Okay, where did you live at that time?
We lived over on Carl Warren's place over from where the Taylors used to live. Anyway, one time, like I say, one time she went in Nash's home there and went to bed. I think she was a shoe and everything. I think anyway, they found her in bed now. Then another time, Mr. Ben Lawler down this side of Brownsboro, man, Ben had a two-story house. One time, she was had a rocking chair down on the porch. One day she stopped there and went in there and sat down and rocking out. The front porch was rocking, and that. One of them asked the other, Ms. Lawler, I think, asked Mr. Lawler, said, who's that old lady out there? Said, oh, that's just Miss Miller out there. And anyway, she'd walk the streets all around this area. She always knew how to get back home, though. Papa would come in from work and say, where's Mom? And she'd say, well, she's gone. Papa would have to get out and look for her. Maybe she might have finally come on back. She usually finally come on back a long time, but when she'd be gone, when she'd come in from work, when she'd go out looking for her. But boy, she was, old as she was strong. And just her mind was bad. That's about it. So she, like I was telling you, she died at our house.
Where was that?
Around Carl.
Where did Burgess Miller die?
Over on the creek place.
On Duck, what called Duck Hill Road, and back up to the creek.
Back up on that little hill there above the creek where we lived when he died.
Just above the spring there, wasn't it?
Well, no, not above the spring, just around top of that, you know, the hill, a little sharp hill you go up and this old house up there, about a 4-room house, I think it was. That's where we lived when he died.
How many places do you remember living with your mama and daddy?
Well, I was born over at the toll gate. And
Now, daddy was born.
well, let's see. I was born over at the toll gate. We lived at the Sprague place, but I was born up there at my grandmother's house, toll gate. We lived over on the Sprague place for 5 years. We moved over here where Miss Lillian Tipton lived, on the Stigger place at 6. We lived there.
Where's the Stigger place?
Over where Miss Lillian lived, and
And
belonged to
Tipton
them.
place.
You know where the big 2-story house is up there next to Mount? That was Mr. Nelson lived there then. We rented for him. I don't think he owned it, but he had it rented anyway. We lived there 1 year. And that's when we moved over where Grandpa died on the creek place, Brother Chris lived there 1 year. We moved back to this side of the Mayville Cemetery, lived there 4 years. The Sprague place. We moved from there over here in the Rhett place, the Holler. Lived there 1 year. Then we moved
That's
back.
where the dairy barn is, the
Yeah.
Loveday.
Yeah. Then we moved back over here, this side of Huntsville, back in the Moore Quarter, they call
Yeah.
it. Lived there 1 year. That was, I was 12 years old over there. And then we moved here to Carl Morris' place. Lived there where Grandma died 4 years. Lived there 4 years. And then we moved over on the Hewlett place over there, we call it. This side of the creek over there, that's where our church is built. And lived there 7 years. And we moved up on Ben Lawler's place and lived there 2 years. I
Now, where's the
married,
Ben Lawler's place? Right across the
you know
road
where
from.
Hazel's lived, Marginell?
Okay, the Hewlett place was the place right across from Hazelup's there, wasn't it? Not Hazelup's, but Lawler's.
You know where McKinney's lived,
Right.
back in them back up
That's the
there.
Hewlett place.
Yeah, that was
Okay.
all that place went plumb to the top of that mountain. That's good. We lived there for 7 years, and they lived Ben Lawler's 2 years. Then we moved over here that's where I married while I lived there, before we moved. Moved here on the river, 7 years. Then we moved up on Wade Lane, Mr. Darwin's place. Lived
Okay,
there.
I went out of the room. Where? Okay, from the. When did you go to the river?
Do you know,
You wasn't. You
the
were
old
married.
you know, remember the old house Hick used to live in back in?
Okay, it was Wade Lane, then the river, or the river and Wade Lane.
No, we moved from on the Hewlett place. I mean, from Ben Lawler's over to the river.
It was Hewlett, Ben Lawler's,
Yeah, and then over on the river.
over in the river,
Seven, yeah.
then the Wade Lane,
Huh?
then the Wade Lane.
Yeah, a year there.
And where'd you go after Wade Lane?
Out of jail.
Yeah.
Then I'm telling where I moved in. Well, I moved back. I moved from there over here back to the gym.
Now you talking about that's after you got married?
Yeah, and Papa moved up here where Joe lived. up
Okay,
there.
where I was born.
Yeah, I guess where you
Yeah.
And I moved, and y'all and Joe and they continued living there now. Y'all did. Joe and all and Papa and Mom till they died. They lived up there. That was their home from then on up there. And I moved back to Holler Miss Grants lived there 4 years. And I moved up on Pulaski Pike on the Thomas place, lived there 1 year. And I moved from Blair over on this side of Maysville on the Ben Martin place, rented from Miss Martin over there, lived there 3 years.
That's back to Big M Farms you're talking about.
Right across the creek where Stan Everett lived, you know where he lived?
Yeah,
Right across the river, I mean.
yeah.
And then I moved over to Carl Martin, lived there 1 year, back of his house. And then I moved out here to Chandler Ford, the brick graveyard, 5 years, and then I moved where I'm at, lived there 31 years.
I used to live at one time back in Possum Holler on Doug Hill Road back there down
Well,
below.
I told you that, I moved from Johnny Martin place back Miss Grant's here, Doug Hill Road.
What about the time Papa and Mama lived on Toll Gate Road?
Well,
That was after they left out here. And they came back a brief period of time.
yeah, I guess I jumped the gun there. Let's see. I believe that's right. I believe it. Yeah. I believe I'm wrong there. While I lived back in Miss Grant, they moved over here at Mom Kate's house here on Tollgate Road and lived there. So many years, I don't know how long.
But they left from out here on this hill and moved to Toll Gate, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And then they
Lived
moved back a while. when
They
they
lived there so long, I don't know how many years they lived there, but of course, then they're getting kind of old and older, you know, and more helpless. We built them that house in up there.
Yeah, well, the little house by
Yeah.
Mom and Daddy's.
Yeah. That's where they ended up, yeah. Yeah, I forgot about them, moving back to, Tollgate Road, like,
Now, what about your mama's people, the McKays?
hmm?
The McKays, your mama's people.